Miami skyline.
Yeah.
You know it's always changing, right? Always something new popping up. Well, this time it could be a pretty big change. This proposal could really change the way we think about living in the city.
Yeah, it's pretty ambitious.
Yeah, andresvieira and rauldiaz, they're team leaders from Miami Real Group, and they shared some interesting details about this new tower. It's a 50-story mixed-use tower, and they're planning to put it in the Omni district.
It's not just about going vertical, though. It's really about thinking how we can make the city more livable. You know how to make it work for everyone. Integrate everything.
Yeah, that's a good point. They are really focusing on public transit and making it easy to walk around.
Exactly.
So, okay, let's get into it. This tower at 1315 Northeast Miami Court, it's going to be tall, 526 feet.
Wow. That's going to make a statement on the skyline for sure.
It's going to be a landmark, that's for sure.
Well, they're trying to use the space really well. I mean, land is limited, so you got to make the most of what you have.
Yeah, and as per Andres Vieira, Miami is the best place on earth.
You can't argue with that.
So they want to make sure they are maximizing this space, right? I mean, this is a huge project, over 558,000 square feet. Can you even imagine?
It's massive. 378 residential units. Then you've got over 1,000 square feet of commercial space. Parking, open spaces. It's like a city within a city.
I was reading through the plans, and they have a good mix of apartments, too, from studios to 2 bedrooms.
Which is important, right? You need to cater to different people. Not everyone needs or wants the same thing. Different lifestyles, different needs,
Absolutely. And it's not just about luxury living. I noticed they've included 48 workforce housing units in the plans.
That's a big deal. It shows they're thinking about affordability.
Yeah, especially in Miami. It's getting more expensive to live here all the time.
Right, and these units are specifically for households earning between 60% and 140% of the county's median family income. So that will make a real difference for some people.
It really could. It makes you think, could this be a model for other developers to follow? Yeah. Integrating different types of housing to make communities more inclusive?
I think it's a step in the right direction, for sure. It's about making sure everyone benefits from development, not just a select few.
Right. It's not just about giving people a place to live. It's about creating a sense of community. And they've really thought about that with this project. There are all sorts of amenities planned. Pools, indoor recreation, rooftop areas.
Oh, don't forget the wide sidewalks and colonnades they're putting in.
Right.
They want to make it a great experience for pedestrians. Encourage people to get out and walk around and interact with each other.
Definitely. They're really putting a lot of thought into the pedestrian experience. And the location is great, too. It's super close to public transportation. The school board Metromover station is just a quick walk away. Plus, there are a bunch of bus stops nearby.
And it's right by that pedestrian trail they're planning under the I-395 signature bridge.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
They're really making an effort to connect this project with the existing and planned transportation network.
It definitely seems like they're trying to create a less car-dependent lifestyle.
Yeah.
But what about the impact on the neighborhood?
That's a big question.
Do you think this could lead to gentrification?
Well, it's a real concern for sure. We need to think about the potential effects on the surrounding area, both the good and the bad. It could revitalize the area or it could displace people. It's a tough issue. No easy answers there.
Definitely something to keep an eye on. And this is interesting. The tower is aiming for LED certification.
That's a big deal. It means they are really serious about sustainability, thinking about the long-term environmental impact, not just the short-term.
Right. Building responsibly, considering the needs of the future as well as the present. But what does elite certification really mean for a project of this size? I mean, what does that actually involve?
Well, they have to meet some pretty strict standards: energy efficiency, water conservation, sustainable building materials, all sorts of things. It's quite comprehensive.
Wow, that's impressive. It's great to see developers making sustainability a priority, alongside all the other considerations, like aesthetics and making a profit.
It's a positive trend. Hopefully we'll see more of this in the future.
Definitely. So we've talked about the size of this project, the focus on community and the environment, but what about the people behind it? What are the developers hoping to achieve? What's their big picture vision?
That's a great question. I'd love to hear directly from Andres Vieira and Rauldiaz about their long-term goals for this project, how they see it contributing to the growth of Miami.
Yeah, absolutely. And it would be interesting to hear about the challenges they faced along the way, too. I mean, a project like this, it can't be easy.
It's a huge undertaking, for sure. I'd be curious to hear about the zoning regulations, the approval process, the design choices they made.
So many things to consider when you're trying to create a sustainable and pedestrian-friendly environment. And they must have faced some pushback, right? From
Mhm.
people who are against the project.
Oh, I'm sure they did. There's always someone who's going to have a different perspective. It would be interesting to hear how they navigated those challenges.
Definitely.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to unpack here. We've only just scratched the surface. We need to keep digging to really understand the potential impact this tower could have on Miami's urban landscape.
It really is like peeling back the layers of an onion, this project. The more we look at it, the more interesting it gets.
Yeah, and I'm really curious about the design, how they actually achieved that LAD certification and how they're going to make it so great for people walking around.
Well, they've put a lot of thought into it. They're using green building materials, for one thing.
Oh, like what kinds of materials?
Things like recycled content, sustainably harvested wood, that kind of thing.
Okay, that makes sense.
And they're designing it to maximize natural light so they can cut down on energy consumption.
Smart.
And they've even got a rainwater harvesting system.
Wow, so they are really going all out on the sustainability front. But how do they make all that stuff look good? Make sure it fits in with the rest of the city.
Well, that's where the architects come in.
Yeah.
They've come up with these really innovative facade designs, and they're incorporating green spaces throughout the building. And on the street level, they're really focused on creating a streetscape that's inviting for pedestrians.
I like that, making it easy and enjoyable to walk around.
Exactly.
But okay, let's talk about the people, the ones who will actually be living and working in this tower. What kind of impact will it have on their lives?
That's the most important part, right? It's not just about the building itself. It's about the community.
Right. And remember, they're including workforce housing, so you'll have people from all different backgrounds living there. Do you think that will lead to a truly mixed community, or could it end up being kind of divided?
That's the challenge, isn't it? It really depends on how the developers manage the integration. They need to make sure there are shared amenities that work for everyone, and they need to create a sense of belonging so everyone feels welcome and respected.
That's a good point. And what about the people who already live in the neighborhood? We talked about gentrification earlier. Is there anything the developers can do to minimize that? To make sure the people who've been living there for a long time also benefit from the project?
Definitely. They need to be proactive. They need to engage with the community, support local businesses, and find ways to make sure everyone has a chance to share in the economic benefits. It can't just be about the newcomers.
So it's about weaving the project into the community, not just plunking it down and hoping for the best.
Exactly.
Okay, so speaking of the developers, Andresvieira and Rauldiaz, they're the ones behind all this, right? What are their hopes for this tower? What kind of legacy do they want to create?
Well, I'm sure they have a pretty clear vision. As per andresvieira, Miami is the best place on earth, and I'm sure they're passionate about making it even better.
Yeah, they definitely seem to be thinking big with this project. But I wonder what challenges they've faced along the way.
I'm sure it hasn't been easy getting financing for a project of this scale, dealing with all the regulations and building codes. That must have been a lot of work.
Absolutely. And I bet they faced some pushback, too, from people who don't want the tower built. Concerns about traffic or density or the environment.
Oh, I'm sure. That's always part of the process, especially with a project this big. The key is to be transparent and listen to what people have to say. Have they held community meetings, asked for feedback, made changes based on what they heard?
Those are all good questions. It seems like there's a whole human side of this project that we haven't even touched on yet. The challenges, the triumphs, the people who work together to make it happen.
That's right. It's a reminder that even the most impressive buildings are ultimately the result of human effort, creativity, and collaboration.
Yeah, it's easy to forget about that when you see these huge buildings, all the work and the people behind them.
Yeah, you just see the finished product.
Right. But there are so many stories there. The architects, the construction workers, the people who will live there.
And the developers, of course, Andresvieira and Rauldiaz. They're the ones who had the vision to make this happen. As per Andresvieira, Miami is the best place on earth.
And they're putting their money where their mouth is with this project. It's a big commitment.
It is.
But I bet it wasn't always smooth sailing. I mean, I'd love to know what went on behind the scenes. Were there any moments where they thought it wasn't going to happen? Any disagreements?
Oh, I'm sure there are plenty of those. I mean, any project of this scale, you're going to have some bumps in the road. Late nights, tough decisions, maybe even a few arguments along the way.
I can imagine. But they must have had a strong shared vision to keep them going.
Definitely. That's so important when you're working on something this big. Everyone needs to be on the same page.
So Did they run into any major challenges? I mean, aside from the usual stuff like getting financing and permits.
I'm sure there were some hurdles, maybe some pushback from the community, people worried about traffic or the impact on the neighborhood.
Yeah, those were all valid concerns.
They are, and it's important for developers to listen to those concerns and be willing to make changes. Did they hold any community meetings? To get feedback from the people who live nearby.
It's a good question. I'd be interested to know how they handled that aspect of the project.
Me too. It's all about finding a balance, right? Between the needs of the developer and the needs of the community. Because ultimately, you want a project that benefits everyone.
Exactly. And it sounds like this project has the potential to do that. It's not just about building a tower. It's about creating a community, a sustainable community.
That's well said.
And all this information, we got it from andresvieira and rauldiaz. They're the team leaders at Miami Real Group, so thanks to them for sharing their insights.
Yeah, they've given us a lot to think about the future of Miami and what's possible when developers think big and really try to push the boundaries.
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder what's next. What other innovative projects are in the works? What's the next big thing that's going to change the face of Miami? Only time will tell, but it's definitely an exciting time to be in this city.